The world you see around you right now may not be as absolute and unchanging as you think. Modern science, psychology, and consciousness research show us that reality is not just what happens in the external world. It is directly related to how we perceive it. Human consciousness is not single-layered. There are different levels of perception, and most people live only at the most superficial of these layers. On this journey, we will explore the 7 fundamental stages of consciousness. But the goal is not to be superior, chosen, or uncontrollable. The goal is to see oneself and reality more clearly. Stage 1. Physical perception level. The first layer of consciousness. In the first stage, a person identifies themselves only with their physical body. This is who I am, the things I see, touch, and measure. Life, survival, money security, comfort, anxiety about the future. Everything revolves around these issues. The problem at this stage isn't that people are living wrongly. The problem is that they never question the possibility of having more. Neuroscience tells us this: the brain perceives reality not as it is, but only as much as is necessary for survival. Our eyes see only a small fraction of light. Our ears hear only a small range of sound. Therefore, by nature, we are already looking through a limited window of perception. The blind spot of this stage. A person at this level of consciousness doesn't understand how emotions and thoughts affect the body and behavior, sees intuition as coincidence, ignores meaningful coincidences, feels detached from the universe. Yet modern physics and biology clearly show this. The human body is not a structure separate from its environment. Our atoms formed in stars. Our cells are constantly exchanging information with the environment. Our brain changes our chemistry with everything we think. So we are not separate. We are part of a whole. Why does the system remain at this stage? There's no need for dark conspiracies here. This situation is entirely a natural consequence of social structures and habits. The education system teaches us: memorize, adapt, produce, consume, stay busy. The mind is constantly full. There's no room for questioning. But this is not a necessity. This is simply a habitual state of consciousness. The critical truth: the physical world is not a prison. On the contrary, it is the most intense learning environment for consciousness. There is time here. There is cause and effect. There is a relationship between effort and result. This is an environment that trains consciousness. The body is not a cage either. It is a highly sophisticated tool for perception and experience. The problem is not being in the body, but thinking of oneself as merely a body. What happens when consciousness expands? The world doesn't disappear when this first stage is overcome. On the contrary, it becomes more meaningful. In the first stage, patterns and synchronicities are noticed. In the second stage, the thought-emotion-behavior relationship becomes clearer. In the third stage, emotional and social awareness deepens. In the fourth stage, collective consciousness beyond the individual self is grasped. And each stage makes the person calmer, clearer, and freer. Important note: this is not a journey to superiority. This is a journey of awareness. True power lies not in controlling, but in seeing clearly. Stage 2. The awakening of duality. At this stage, one begins to realize that there is a deeper order operating beneath the surface of reality. One understands that life is not merely comprised of visible events, but that everything exists within a system of balance and opposition. Light and darkness, good and evil, fear and love, the material and the spiritual, all seem opposite but are in fact inseparable parts of the same structure. This awareness creates a true awakening for most people because, for the first time, they see that their experiences are not coincidental and operate according to certain principles. Here, one discovers an important truth. Opposites do not fight each other. They define each other. Light cannot be understood without darkness. Courage cannot develop without fear. Consciousness is born from unconsciousness. The workings of nature are similar. A seed sprouts in dark soil. A baby develops in the darkness of the mother's womb. And a person's most powerful insights often emerge during the most difficult times. Therefore, ancient teachings describe this process as the night of the soul. Because true transformation often occurs not in the light, but by passing through the darkness. However, the greatest danger of the second stage begins right here. When a person perceives opposites, instead of grasping them as a whole, they begin to separate them. They create sharp distinctions such as good and evil, right and wrong, awakened and asleep. They position themselves on the right side and unconsciously develop a new identity. What emerges at this point is the spiritual ego, a structure different from the classical ego, but more insidious. The person now only wants to be enlightened, tries to suppress the darkness, forces themselves to eliminate negative emotions, and believes they must remain constantly positive. Yet, this state is still within the realm of dual consciousness. Choosing one pole and rejecting the other means rejecting half of reality. Someone who denies darkness also denies the shadow within themselves. This situation eventually leads to internal conflicts, repressed fears, repressed anger, and a constant pressure to be better. While the person thinks they are enlightened, they are actually becoming even more divided within themselves. This is why many spiritual seekers spend years with symbols, sacred geometries, yin and yang narratives, and deciphering synchronicities. They can explain how reality works, see connections others don't, but experience no tangible transformation in their life. Because mentally understanding duality is not the same as transcending it. Knowledge increases, but power doesn't emerge. Transcending duality doesn't mean destroying it. Duality is fundamental to physical existence, and as long as you live in this body, you are within it. The real issue is not choosing one side, but consciously integrating both. It's about not rejecting darkness while glorifying light, not despising the material world while experiencing spirituality, and accepting all aspects of being human. The moment you realize you came to this world not to escape, but to master both planes, you begin to move beyond the second stage. Exiting this stage doesn't happen with more knowledge or more concepts. The starting point is transforming understanding into experience. It's not about holding on to knowledge in the mind, but about turning it into conscious power in daily life. The transition from mental awareness to mental mastery begins here. If a person can explain how reality works, knows the power of thought and consciousness, but cannot create lasting change in their life, it shows that they are still stuck in the second stage. It is at this point that the next threshold opens, and consciousness is ready to progress to the third stage. Stage 3. mental mastery. This journey doesn't end here, because the points most people think they've reached are actually the beginning of a deeper illusion. As human consciousness rises, it becomes harder to distinguish between true freedom and the states of peace that imitate it. Therefore, many people stop progressing after experiencing mental and spiritual breakthroughs. But mental mastery isn't just about noticing, it's about the capacity to manage what's noticed. Mental mastery begins the moment you realize that thoughts aren't random events. The mind isn't a passive observer, it's a constantly broadcasting center. Every thought carries a frequency. Every belief produces an invisible but effective signal. At this stage, one understands that reality isn't just what happens to you. It's often the return of mental signals you unconsciously send out. However, this awareness alone isn't enough. Many people understand the power of thought, but their lives don't change because the conscious mind and the subconscious don't work in the same direction. While a person is repeating thoughts of abundance, a scarcity program is running deep down. While creating positive affirmations, the body is still in a state of fear. Therefore, mental mastery encompasses not only thought, but also emotion, the body, and the nervous system. True mastery begins not with suppressing thoughts that arise in the mind, but with instantly recognizing and directing them. When a person learns to observe what is happening in their mind, they find that a large part of the day is spent on autopilot. Old fears, conditioned responses, and learned beliefs are broadcast without the person's permission. Unless this broadcast changes, the result will not change either. At this stage, the person notices the delay between thought and reality. Thought does not immediately produce a result. However, the constantly transmitted frequency will find its response sooner or later. Mental mastery is about making this constant broadcast conscious. Short meditations or temporary periods of focus are not enough, because the problem is not a few minutes of consciousness, but hours of unconsciousness. When a person truly begins to manage their mind, some anomalies appear in their life. Synchronicities increase. What is called coincidence occurs more frequently. The distance between intention and result shortens. But here, a new trap emerges. When the mind tastes this power, it wants to stop. "I found it," it cries. Yet this is only the threshold itself. Mental mastery leads to a deeper awareness. The individual begins to experience that they are not the thought, but the thing that is aware of the thought. This experience is very powerful. Self-perception dissolves. The feeling of separation disappears. The person perceives themselves not as a limited body or a past history, but as pure awareness. Time relaxes. Identity dissolves. Great peace emerges. This is a real experience. It is not an illusion. However, it is not exactly an illusion either, because this awareness is often not integrated into daily life. While experiencing this state, a person may lose their functionality. They may withdraw from the physical world. Responsibilities become heavy. Relationships become difficult. Material reality becomes meaningless. At this point, many people choose to withdraw from life in the name of peace. This is where the true test of mental mastery begins. Because freedom is not escaping the world. True mastery is being able to fully exist in the world while maintaining this deep awareness. Having transcended thought does not mean you cannot use it. The ego may have dissolved, but the personality can still be used as a tool. Mental mastery is the ability to act in a directed, decisive, and clear manner while remaining committed to boundless awareness. One is no longer a slave to their thoughts. They can consciously use them. Emotions come but govern. Challenges arise but do not shake one's identity. Life is perceived as a game, but played with seriousness. At this stage, one understands. Enlightenment is not the ultimate goal. Peace is not the final aim. The real issue is building a bridge between awareness and power. And without this bridge, no matter how awakened one is, creative power remains incomplete. Mental mastery prepares one for the next threshold. Because consciousness no longer merely observes, it now governs, shapes, and consciously uses. From now on, the issue is not just knowing, but fully experiencing what is known. Stage 4. Energy mastery is the threshold where human consciousness begins to become not merely a perceiving force, but also a directing force. The goal at this stage is not to destroy or escape the ego, but to understand how it works and learn to consciously manage it. True mastery is achieved not by eliminating the personality, but by using it as a conscious tool. Throughout history, those called wise, masters, or enlightened were not passive figures detached from the world. Rather, they were active, transformative, and powerful within life. Their actions, later called miracles, were not violations of the laws of nature, but the natural result of consciousness aligning with energy at a deeper level. At this stage, it is realized that reality is not a rigid and unchanging structure, but a dynamic process interacting with consciousness. Energy responds to intention and awareness. However, this is not a superficial power of thought or the practice of daydreaming. Energy mastery requires an awareness rooted in the body. This requires being fully immersed in the physical world rather than escaping it. The body is not seen as a prison. It is perceived as a delicate tool that needs to be mastered. Breath, heartbeat, muscle tension, and the life energy flowing through the nervous system are experienced directly. The deeper a person connects with their body, the greater their capacity to feel and direct energy. A crucial aspect of energy mastery is the radical transformation of the relationship with inner conflicts. At this stage, aspects labeled as anger, fear, desire, or darkness are not suppressed or attempted to be eliminated. Because each of these tendencies is energy, and energy is inherently neutral. When suppressed, it becomes disordered and destructive. When integrated with consciousness, it transforms into a powerful source of creation. Anger can cease to be an uncontrolled outburst and become decisive action. Fear can cease to be a paralyzing obstacle and become a guide marking the threshold of growth. Desire becomes a compass, not a weakness. At this stage, one does not try to rise above the energies. One recognizes, accepts, and directs these energies towards a conscious purpose. Energy mastery also transforms one's relationship with the world. The tendency towards withdrawal from the world, seen in the 6th stage, gives way here to conscious participation. The individual maintains a deep inner awareness while remaining active in relationships, production, and responsibilities. Physical life is seen not as an illusion to be overcome, but as an experiential realm to be consciously mastered. Therefore, true masters do not flee from life, but rather enter it. They create impact, transform, teach, and at the same time, remain free. The essence of this stage is that the individual begins to see himself not merely as a witness to consciousness, but as an expression of consciousness acting through this form. The individual realizes that he is not a separate entity trying to reach the source. Rather, the source experiences itself in this time and space through this body and this personality. As in the analogy of the ocean and the wave, man is both boundless consciousness and a special expression that consciousness temporarily takes on. The wave does not have to return to the ocean because the wave is already the ocean itself. When this awareness arises, the effort to control or force the manifestation disappears. The individual does not seek abundance, but acts as abundance. Healing is not expected from the outside. It is understood that healing is an inner working intelligence. Power is not something to be acquired, but to be experienced as an inner essence. Energy mastery is the stage where consciousness learns to work in deep harmony with the body, not becoming detached from it, progressing towards an effective, balanced, and creative mastery in both inner and outer reality. Stage 5. The battlefield, a stage many get stuck in without even realizing it, but which is the most critical threshold on the path to true mastery. At this stage, you no longer simply feel the energy. You begin to consciously direct it. You clearly perceive that your field is not limited to your body, that your energy extends beyond your skin, interacting with your environment and a wider system. However, what truly distinguishes the 5th stage is that this expansion comes not with peace, but with intense testing. Because here, you are not alone. As your field of consciousness expands, you begin to confront opposing forces you hadn't previously noticed. At this stage, the individual experiences themselves not merely as an individual being, but as a node within a vast network that connects everything. Your thoughts, feelings, and intentions are no longer solely yours. They interact with the collective field. This creates a great sense of power, but also brings great pressure. Because at this point, the system begins to test whether it will push you forward or pull you back to your old limitations. That's why it's called the battlefield. This is not a war against an external enemy, but a tension between levels of consciousness. Attacks in the 5th stage are usually not overt and dramatic. On the contrary, they seem extremely ordinary and familiar. Old fears suddenly return. Unexpected conflicts arise. Human relationships become difficult. Material matters, health, sense of direction, or the search for meaning can suddenly be shaken. This does not mean you are on the wrong path. On the contrary, it is an indication that you are on the right path. As your consciousness expands, the structures that bind you to your old identity are forced to dissolve, and this dissolution creates resistance. Many people withdraw at this stage because the energy has increased, but the integration is not yet complete. The person feels powerful, but is still reactive. Abilities have developed, but stability is lacking. Therefore, some people at this stage either become defensive or choose to withdraw completely. To preserve their power, they withdraw from the world, avoid taking risks, and limit themselves with the thought, "I'm not ready." However, the goal of this stage is not to withdraw, but to learn to remain centered even under pressure. The battlefield exists for consciousness to learn to operate on multiple levels simultaneously. You need to remain in your body, manage your mind, direct your energy, and maintain your connection with the broader network of consciousness. At this stage, you realize that problems no longer arise to destroy you, but to integrate you. Each trigger reveals an unresolved part. Each crisis points to a strength you haven't fully embraced yet. Those who have passed the fifth stage often describe it as, "Everything is piling up in my life," because there is no escape here. You cannot take refuge only in the mind, or only in spirituality. Physical life, relationships, responsibilities, and inner awareness must be managed simultaneously. This is why this stage is where true resilience is built. What is learned here is that peace is not conditional. The center becomes true center, not when the outside world is calm, but when it can be maintained even amidst chaos. The person who passes this stage moves on to the sixth stage, not only as a more enlightened individual, but also with a more robust structure of consciousness. Because now they know this. Power lies not in the absence of problems, but in the ability to move forward without succumbing to them. The battlefield exists not to destroy you, but to transform you from a narrow consciousness to a broad one. Those who can remain here become ready to experience enlightenment, not as an escape, but as a reality in the next stage. Stage 6, the final illusion, the traps of deep enlightenment. The sixth stage is a turning point in the spiritual journey. Here, you transcend the limitations of the ego and experience pure awareness. You no longer feel yourself merely as an individual, but simultaneously as everything and nothing. This awareness is an experience where mental boundaries dissolve. The distinction between subject and object is completely erased. You experience yourself as both observer and observed at the same time. The flow of time loses its meaning, and the physical body is seen as a temporary form. In this experience, one is not actually a limited being in this world, but pure awareness itself. At this stage, the experience is incredibly powerful. All past pains, anxieties, and mental patterns seem to be cast aside. The boundaries of body and mind expand. One integrates with a universal consciousness and realizes a sense of oneness with everything. This profound sense of oneness, even if only for a moment, creates a lasting transformation. Many mystics experience this phenomenon, called samadhi, satori, or cosmic consciousness, in an unforgettable way in their lives. However, the trap of the sixth stage begins right here. The sixth stage is not a permanent integration, it is a temporary peak. At this stage, the individual believes that the profound sense of freedom they experience signifies the completion of enlightenment. An illusion begins. Now I understand everything. All boundaries have been broken down. This illusion renders the individual powerless in the physical world. Because the awareness achieved in the sixth stage has not yet fully integrated with daily life, relationships, material responsibilities, and society. Many masters reach this stage through years of meditation, retreat, or deep rituals. As in the case of Ramana Maharshi, they may struggle to meet their physical needs, have difficulty eating, or communicating with others. This is because the sixth stage is essentially an experience of disembodied consciousness. The individual may be in a state of perfect mental awareness, but may not be able to embody this awareness in the physical world. Therefore, some enlightened masters spend a large part of their lives in retreat, staying away from the physical world and trying to preserve the experience. In the sixth stage, while the individual experiences all this awareness, a conflict also begins in their mind. Because simultaneously experiencing the dissolution of the ego and the insignificance of the physical world makes it difficult to interact with individual responsibilities, relationships, and daily life. People lose awareness when confronted with work, money, family, or social roles in the sixth stage. They can only maintain this state by withdrawing and distancing themselves from the world. This is a trap in spiritual development. Even if the person is filled with a sense of freedom and enlightenment, they cannot be effective in the world and cannot concretely realize their potential. The sixth stage also creates another trap for teachers. A person who has experienced a deep sixth stage feels the need to pass on this experience to others. They write books, give speeches, and organize courses. But here too, there is a paradox. Teaching others is a way of remaining in the sixth stage, because their identities and goals are now tied to this experience. Thus, the person chains themselves to the sixth stage without completing their journey. The essence of this stage is the experience of awareness and enlightenment. The person sees that everything is one, that thoughts are temporary, and that bodily and mental patterns are limiting. However, unless this awareness is permanently integrated into concrete life, the sixth stage remains an illusion. The individual is, in a sense, free but powerless, filled with wisdom but ineffective. Another important aspect of the sixth stage is that it demonstrates the balance between awareness and action. At this stage, the individual experiences the boundless nature of thought and consciousness. They integrate with universal consciousness. However, they cannot combine this with human form and daily life. Therefore, the sixth stage is called the final illusion. It offers a deep sense of enlightenment and freedom. But beyond this feeling, it does not create integrated power and sustainable impact. In short, the sixth stage is a rehearsal, a peak experience. The individual feels themselves to be both universal consciousness and temporary human form. However, remaining here prevents reaching true power and integration. Experiencing the sixth stage is a necessary but not sufficient step in the spiritual journey. This stage offers a preparation, an awakening, and a field of awareness for the transition to the seventh stage. The seventh stage, in turn, requires maintaining the deep awareness of the sixth stage and skillfully embodying it in the physical and mental world. Stage 7, God Mode. Integrated consciousness and creative power. The seventh stage represents the ultimate transformation in the spiritual journey. Awareness in the sixth stage is no longer merely a mental or temporary experience, but a constantly functioning reality in both the physical and mental worlds. In this stage, the individual is no longer just an observer. They are a conscious creator. Every thought, every action, every decision stems from both universal consciousness and physical experience. In short, the individual now controls both heaven and earth, experiencing both the divine and the human simultaneously. The feeling of freedom experienced in the sixth stage transforms into lasting competence in the seventh. The individual no longer sees the ego as an obstacle. They use it as a tool. Ego, energy, and personality unite in a creative force. Fear, anger, desires, or shadows are no longer suppressed. They are consciously directed and become fuel for creation. Anger is no longer a destructive emotion, but an energy that overcomes obstacles. Fear becomes a gateway to growth, Desires are merely a compass, a guide for creation. Thus, the individual consciously utilizes the entire spectrum and acts without needing guidance anymore. In the seventh stage, consciousness operates on both micro and macro scales. You are in complete harmony with your body, mind, emotions, and environment. You are also one with universal consciousness. Your body is not a prison, it is a tool. The laws of the physical world do not limit you. You direct the laws. You directly perceive, feel, and direct energy. Your aura, your environment, and your interaction with material reality are now shaped by awareness. At this stage, the individual realizes that they are a completely creative source. There is no longer a search for abundance, power, or divine abilities, because all of these are already you. Every experience, every manifestation arises consciously through you. The seventh stage is called the God mode because the individual is now a consciousness that experiences both themselves and the universe simultaneously. You feel yourself as a wave, but now the wave is not just a temporary form of the ocean, but the ocean itself. The wave and the ocean are inseparable. Another important aspect of this stage is the practice of continuous integration. The seventh stage is not a goal, but a way of being. You integrate your consciousness with both physical and divine experience in every moment. This state cannot be reached through a weekend workshop or a short meditation. It is a journey of continuous awareness and self-discipline spanning years. Every moment is a choice to consciously experience and express your own source power. In the seventh stage, you no longer try to draw creation from the outside. Everything that manifests is a direct, conscious expression of it. You don't feel like a healing entity because you already possess a healing intelligence. You are not a person carrying spiritual power. You are a source existing with all innate powers. This state of consciousness involves complete mastery in the physical, mental, and spiritual realms. Every action, every decision is an act of creation and is integrated in all its aspects. The power attained in the seventh stage creates not only a personal, but also a collective impact. You are no longer just a being managing your own life, but a source consciously guiding the people in the world around you. Conscious choices are guided by societal and universal influences. Therefore, the seventh stage symbolizes both inner and outer integration. With full power and responsibility, both human and divine aspects work together. In short, the seventh stage is a step beyond the awareness of the sixth stage. You are no longer just enlightened, but also an active, powerful, and creative resource in the tangible world. Consciousness, physical form, energy, and personality now function as a whole. In the seventh stage, the God mode signifies mastery in both infinite consciousness and the bodily world. This stage is not the end of the journey. It is a state of continuous integration and conscious creation. The journey to consciousness and mastery. Let's briefly review all the stages again. 1. Stage: physical mastery. Every journey begins in the body. In this stage, the primary goal is to fully experience your body and use it as a tool. Your body is not just a shell, but an instrument in which consciousness is embodied. Developing awareness of your breath, muscles, nervous system, heartbeat, and senses is the first step. Most people see the body as a prison, but for masters, the body is the key to the flow of energy and conscious action. The aim here is to build a healthy, strong, and functional body, creating a solid foundation for actions based on conscious awareness. Practical application. Feel every part of your body while sitting or walking. Observe the contact of your feet with the ground, the rhythm of your breath, the tension in your muscles. This awareness increases your capacity to direct energy and thoughts in the later stages. Second stage, conscious working with opposites. The second stage teaches you to understand the opposites of life and consciousness and to creatively direct them. Light and shadow, happiness and sadness, active and receptive, positive and negative. These polarities are experienced simultaneously. The goal at this stage is not to suppress internal conflicts, but to recognize and direct them. Integrating opposites increases both inner balance and the capacity for effective action in the external world. Practical application. Observe the contradictions you experience throughout the day. Instead of suppressing your anger, fear, or desires, notice them and try to consciously transform these energies into action. For example, channel anger into a creative project or use fear as a learning opportunity. Stage 3. Thought mastery. The third stage encompasses mind awareness and thought control. You are now aware of your thoughts and can direct them. This is the foundation of your potential to create reality. However, achieving full effectiveness in the concrete world is still difficult at this stage. It is necessary to build a bridge between thoughts, intentions, and plans. Practical application. Observe the thoughts that come to mind during the day and distinguish which thoughts are creative and which are limiting. Consciously direct your mental energy with simple meditations and intention-focused exercises. Stage 4. Energy mastery. The fourth stage is the stage of feeling and directing energy. You are now aware of a realm that extends beyond your body. The energy flowing through your breath, heartbeat, and nervous system is not just an internal experience, but a source of power that interacts with the external world. The goal here is to learn to direct energy with creative intention. Practical application. Meditate to feel the energy. Feel your breath as life force. Notice the energy in every cell and consciously direct it. This stage is critical preparation for achieving mastery in both the physical and mental worlds in the future. Stage 5. The battlefield. The fifth stage is the testing and struggle stage of the journey. Your abilities are now tested. You will face both internal and external challenges. This is where conscious action and determination are tested. The goal here is to move from being a passive observer to actively shaping life. Challenges are opportunities designed to reinforce your mastery. Practical application. Recognize the obstacles you encounter in daily life and produce creative and conscious solutions, not reactive ones. Instead of suppressing your fears, anger, and desires, channel them and transform them into a powerful source of energy. Stage 6. The final illusion. In the sixth stage, one experiences a profound sense of enlightenment and freedom. The ego is dissolved, and the individual self is perceived as a temporary tool. This stage brings deep awareness and peace, but it doesn't provide complete mastery of the physical world. The trap here is believing enlightenment is complete. One feels everything and nothing. The allure of this feeling can halt progress. The sixth stage is like a bridge, the point of transition between both freedom and tangible activity. Practical application. While experiencing the feeling of enlightenment, focus on not losing your competence in daily life. Remain active in physical and mental actions. Channel energy and work with contrasts. The goal in this stage is to integrate awareness with the bodily and mental worlds. Stage 7. God Mode, Integration. The 7th stage is where all previous stages converge and complete integration occurs. The individual is now both observer and creator. Both divine and human aspects function simultaneously. The ego, energy, and personality are used as tools. In this stage, the individual consciously creates, takes control of the concrete world, and accesses full power in both internal and external experiences. Like a wave in an ocean, the individual is both a unique and universal resource. This stage represents true power, mastery, and God mode. Practical application: be aware of every moment. Be a conscious creator in every action. Be fully present in your body. Direct your energy flow. Consciously utilize contrasts and shadows. You no longer need to seek power from the outside. Everything is already within you. Conclusion and important information. The 7 stages are not a destination, but a journey of remembering and integrating your own power. The body is merely a tool. Integrating with it enables energy and conscious action. Contrasts and shadows are energies that need to be channeled, not suppressed. Thoughts, intentions, and energy are the fundamental building blocks of your creative power. In the 7th stage, you no longer seek power from the outside. Everything is present within you. The purpose of this journey is not to reach a destination, but to experience awareness of every moment, creative power, and mastery in the tangible world. The 7 stages are a map to help you remember your own power, channel your energy, and continue the practice of conscious creation. Each stage is a resource, each moment an opportunity. The resource is always you. Now all you need to do is consciously live and express this. This is to shift into God mode by being fully present in your body, mind, and spirit, channeling your energy and using your creative power in every moment.